Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be kind of like an updated version and or just another video talking about this particular topic. So I think as of recently, more or less like this year, I've been making a lot of my prototypes of my photo cards at home, and as well as making very like speedy batches because I didn't have time to send them out to a manufacturer, wait for them to be delivered. So I made some just at home. So I wanted to show you guys a bit of that process. So to kind of quickly go through, grab the wrong stack. I think in the previous video, so I'll link that down below if you're interested, because I think I did a bit more of a thorough way of explaining about how I format my drawings for photo cards and my template. Now in this video, I will be providing the template for you guys, so that will be in the description. But just to preface, that template is very much tailored to my specific printer and the kind of workarounds of things that I like to do. So feel free to adjust the template to whatever you need. But for the most part, I probably won't make like many different versions of the template because I can't cater to everybody's needs. So feel free to download that and adjust it to whatever, whatever you need it to be for your photo cards. So in the past, I did show how I made these ones. So you can kind of see they have like the glossy laminate, and this one's like the sparkly ones. Let me zoom in for you guys. So it's very glossy. On this side, there is no laminate, so it's just the plain photo paper that I'm using as the back side. And then I had one that was just the hollow version. And these were just basically prototypes, so me testing out whether or not I liked the formatting, the colors, and all that before I sent it out to a manufacturer. So this is just normal gloss. There's no laminate on it. And then here's like the back side. I printed these ones upside down by accident, but you kind of get the idea. Then playing around with other finishes. So this one has like the sand texture, which I don't really like. I wish they were a little bit more faint. It's just very hard to see. So I made a couple of these of my OCs, and then we have more testing here. But more recently, I have been playing around with matte laminate, which is kind of what these ones are. So you can see there's not really any harsh glossiness. There's like a little bit of sheen, but I was able to make the matte ones at home. So I'm going to be showing you guys the process for that today. It's very similar to the glossy laminates that I've done in the past. So I made one of Flynn's just as a test, because I had extra room on my page. Same with like these Don Hung versions. I have Zeal, and then I have Mint. But you can see that there are some places for error, which is a little bit frustrating. So this has a kind of heavy wrinkling due to improper placement and just like laying down of my matte laminate. So before we get started in showing you guys how I made this batch, which I will leave a little bit blurry for you guys, we're going to start off with the art. Then I'll show you guys how I set up my template. Then we can do the printing, laminating, cutting, and cutting the corners so that we can make all these cute cards, because I just wanted to make some play cards, even though I have no conventions coming up right now. I'm just prepping for next year. I think it's just cute to make these as gifts for friends or family, or just for yourself of your own characters or of the fandoms that you're in. So let's go ahead and get started. So starting off with the artwork. So because we're on to the art portion, I might keep this voiceover a little bit on the shorter side. I don't know if my voice is like going to go because I spent a little bit too long shoveling snow today. But for the art, there's like a few things to keep in mind. I ended up already finishing Yejun and Noah by the time I was recording the stuff for Bambi. So I highly recommend that if you know the size and template for your photo cards, I recommend knowing where your bleed lines are going to be alongside with anything like the safe area and your cut lines. So I'm following a template that I typically followed from previous photo cards that I've made in the past, because I've always made them with moo.com, or Moo is like the manufacturer. So they have like a template, which I'll put on the screen right here if you're interested. You can download it off of their website as well. So it's just like the Moo for like business card, I believe, is what theirs is labels as. So that is what I use for the template. It's a good idea of how you want to potentially think about the artwork for your cards, because you shouldn't have too many things on the edges of your cards. You should make room for bleed, because if you want to align your back side of your card and the front side of your card, you need a little bit of wiggle room so that there might be a little bit of misalignment, and it just makes it easier for you to do some cutting to have some like nice clean edges if you have like the bleed lines as well, if you want something to have like full bleed right up until the edge. And I think the rest of the art footage is more or less like on the simple side, or like the standard to what I do. So if you're interested in just how I work on illustrations, you can check them out. I instead worked on, I think, all the photo cards eventually just on Procreate rather than doing them on Clip Studio Paint like I've done in the past for my play cards. I thought it would just be nice to treat these more like painted illustrations that I typically do on Procreate, because I might use these for prints in the future instead of just the photo cards. I'm still like undecided at this point, but I will leave you guys with just the music for now. I think there's nothing really to talk about the art portion other than the fact that I tried my best to keep the color palette very similar to like all of them throughout the entirety of drawing them all. So oftentimes I will have the reference window open with the previous member that I was working on, so that I can make sure that the colors looked all cohesive, because I want them to be all into like one set. One more thing I forgot to talk about. So if you're very particular about colors and how they look like on print, then I recommend working in CMYK when you can, either like changing the color profile in Clip Studio Paint or in Procreate or whatever you're working on, so you have a better idea of what colors might look different once they're printed into a physical medium. Then you can definitely do that, just in case if you're just more particular about it. Otherwise, for me, I did try my best to keep all the colors fairly vibrant and kind of like cutesy, fun colors, because I think that worked the best for the concept. But my printer does print a little bit darker and a little bit duller more recently, because I haven't replaced with more on brand ink for my printer, especially for like Photo Magenta and Photo Cyan. I feel like those ones I always have to get the actual brand of ink. The other ones I can typically buy ones that are a little bit more of like off brand, and they perform pretty well. So just do a little bit of testing and seeing what your preferences are, or if you are uploading these to like some other website or for a manufacturer, then definitely check out what file requirements that they use, whether or not they use RGB or if they use CMYK. So I'll come back in a bit once we start to talk about the backside, because I feel like this is just a normal portrait like I do for a lot of the other videos, so there's nothing really new going on here. So yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, so with Bambi finished and the rest of the other members, I will go ahead and work on the back side. So all of them, because they are sharing a theme and I want them to be all together, they will be sharing the same back design. So I'm going to go through a time-lapse version of this. I did a little bit of planning at first, and then I start to play around with text and placement and adding different elements to see what worked the best for me. I like doing this in Clip Studio and Paint just because if I'm working with a lot of selecting and resizing alongside with like, I don't know, working with text typically or shapes, I like working in Clip Studio Paint a little bit more than I do in Procreate. So I decided to just switch it over. I initially had like a certain idea that I wanted, but I ended up switching it up and changing it because I like having the curve of the moon be a little bit bigger and just have everything almost like in a more central-ish look. I usually go through like a few different iterations, but I like to keep the backing card pretty simple. And because of such a dark, rich blue color on the back card, I wanted to add as much white as possible too. One, I think the contrast looks nice, but then two, it puts a little bit less of a burden on my printer if I have more white present. So I thought it'd be easier for me to explain this in real time rather than voiceover. So let me go ahead and go through our backing card, which is this one. Then we have Yejun, then we have Noah, we have Bambi, we have Eunho, and we have Hamin. So what I'm gonna do next is basically I wanna copy all of these to a template. So to make it a little bit easier, I am going to be copying, pasting all of these like this until we have it all together. You can kind of see that my backing card right here is smaller than the artwork. They are still the same aspect ratio, but I tend to like working on the card artwork that's on the front side at a higher resolution and a bigger size typically, but the backing card I'm not too concerned about, so I just have it at a standard size. So we're going to be copying and pasting these into my photo card template. Now, some people have asked for me to upload this particular template, and I will, but please do adjust this to whatever fits your printer's needs. My printer is able to print on full bleed, so there is no like strange white borders. So if your cards do get cut off or they're not the appropriate size, you will probably have to adjust that. This is just the settings that work for me on a full bleed of an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. And these cards are whatever the standard mood size cards that I probably mentioned earlier. Okay, so onto the template. In the purple folder right here, and we have a red folder. So purples are my fronts, which is going to be the artworks, and then the back side is the backing card. So I'm just going to paste everything into this folder first, and then we're going to drag and drop our backing card into the appropriate folder. I'm going to hide that for now so that we have only the boys visible. And you can kind of see that I have my folders clipped to this template, which I made in a previous video, and I talked about how I made sure that these cards are basically aligned front and back and all the way around so that once you flip your page, you have it completely aligned. So I'm gonna resize our cards into the appropriate size for the template. Now I did make sure to add little bleed guidelines right here, or these cut lines for myself. They're not like perfectly made, but they're just made to whatever works for me. And I'm just double checking to make sure that everything is kind of within our cut lines and our bleed lines. So I like doing this to make sure that even if you do flip your page like over and you have like your outer side printed, if there's like a few millimeters of misalignment, most likely you won't see like any of this blue purpley template that I have, as long as you have your artwork bigger than the size that was needed. So for me, I do take in consideration these bleed lines. Most likely, if you're working from a template for a manufacturer, oftentimes if it's doing any print type of media, they'll tell you where your bleed lines are, your cut lines, and where like a safe zone is. So for me, I pretty much know that these won't, like any important text and stuff won't get cut off by these cut lines that I've made. So now that they're all resized, I'm just gonna slide them over. So I'm gonna use my keyboard. I'm just gonna grab the rest of them and slide them across so they're relatively at least somewhat aligned. You can adjust these to whatever you need. Ooh, I don't like playing favorites. I might give some to friends. So let me see. I'm Yejun biased, so I might grab a Yejun. Noah, Bambi. I feel like every time I do this, I always make Unho the one that I don't do a duplicate of. But the good thing about doing these cards like this, if you are printing them at home, as long as you understand the template and then the front and back side, you can definitely make just like one-off photo cards of like all unique characters with their own backing cards. But luckily for me, because these ones are all like themed together for our back side, so I'm just gonna hide this folder. We're gonna bring back our backs and kind of do the same thing. So I'm going to resize our backing card, clipped on template, and then you can just copy and paste all of these. Now, I think I talked about it in the other video. So because this is the back side of our cards, you're gonna have to make sure that if you are doing different backing cards, so let's say this one is pink, this one is yellow, and then this one is green for your cards. So when you're flipping over and doing the printing, these outside ones are going to have to switch. So this one will suddenly become red and then this one will become green because you are going to be turning your page over, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. The middle ones should remain the same. But another thing to keep in mind is that before we print these off, know how your printer feeds paper and how it prints. So for me, after I print off this side, I'm gonna feed the paper as if it's like this into the feeder. But then when it prints out, it prints it upside down. And because of that, I have to know that when I put my page back into the printer, I have to make sure that I flip it over and then I have to turn it upside down so that it will be basically printed like this. But I'm keeping my template like front facing. You can also like probably flip your template if that's too confusing for you, but just play around with your printer to find what works the best. I'll show probably maybe a little bit of footage here and there of like the printing process so you guys can kind of see, and then we'll get to manually cutting and showing you how I laminate my cards as well. So let's go ahead and get to that stage. Hopefully you guys can kind of see. So before we print actually, I wanted to show you the paper that I'm going to be using. So this is the double-sided glossy brochure paper from You Ink It, and this is by far my favorite. It's really thick paper and both sides are glossy, but there is like a very slight difference in the quality from the front and the back. I always try to find something that's like 300 GSM instead of anything lower, because I found that anything within, I guess even like the 200s, let's say 270 or 240, was a little bit too thin and flimsy. So while I'm printing, I'm just gonna insert the paper as normal, and then when I flip it over, I will also have to turn it around. Now, if you're unsure of how your printer prints or you're a little bit confused, I always like to mark one of the corners. Just keep track of one corner. So what I'll do is let's put a mark in the bottom right hand corner, and then feed it into your printer. And if it comes out with the mark on, let's say, the top left, then that means that it has done like reversed, basically. It's flipped this way, which is how my printer likes to print. So let me go ahead and get this set up so we can start to laminate our photo cards. Okay, so now that we have our cards printed, so if I just flip it over horizontal, or like this way, I guess like a book, you can kind of see that it is hopefully aligned, but also facing the right way. I've definitely printed it upside down before because I forgot to flip my page because I was rushing. But the cards, I feel like, are a little bit too flimsy still at this stage, but also I don't want the color to get scratched off because of the paper type. So what we're gonna do next is laminate our cards. I'm not using a heat laminator, and I've changed the type of laminate that I've been using. And this is the brand that I use. So what I like about these is the fact that you don't need a laminator to apply these. Also, it has a matte finish and it kind of makes my cards a little bit more sturdier. Now, I get these ones from AliExpress. I don't remember if this one still has its listing on there, but if you search for matte laminate or self-adhesive laminating sheets, you'll get like a bunch of different ones, like gloss ones, ones with like sand stars, hollow finishes, just clear, whatever. You can do whatever finish you like for your photo cards. For me, I've been liking using the matte. So I like using 2 sheets, one for the front and for the back. So I'm going to show you guys how I apply them. This is like, I feel like 95% foolproof, at least for myself. I had some hiccups, but it's because I've been a little bit I had oh, my throat's going right now. But basically what I'm gonna do, it's a little bit hard for you guys to see. I'm gonna peel back, let's say 1 inch to 1.5 inches of the backing sheet. So it kind of looks like this. So you have their film and this is our backing sheet. What I'm gonna do, hopefully you guys can see, all that matters is really this top section for now, and then I will move it in a bit. So we're going to align our page. Oh, I guess I do need to show you guys the bottom. So I just want to make sure that the laminate's going to be able to cover all of our cards, and then we're just going to stick it down, and hopefully with the 1 inch-ish kind of free edge that you've made, you've adhered your cards to the matte laminate like this. So I'm gonna do is flip it around, and then I'm gonna adhere it to my desk like this, and just make sure everything here is like wrinkle free. So do it like this. See if you guys can see a little bit better. But I like using the adhesive directly to my desk. I just lift it up and then kind of get it going. So I'm just gonna slowly push against this, and luckily because of that tab, my laminate backing sheet is not gonna get stuck typically. So I'm not putting too much pressure at this point. I just am worried about applying this evenly and without wrinkles or creases. But once we get this sheet down, then we can kind of press a little bit harder to make sure that we have 1, no air bubbles, and 2, to make sure that this is fully adhered. Just be careful of whatever you're using, that you're not leaving any like scratch marks. Actually quite a bit. My throat. But if you use a squeegee and you put enough pressure, you can kind of eliminate the little bubbles. So I'm just gonna try my best to get rid as much of these as I can before we flip it over, and we basically do the same thing. So that is one side protected. I'm gonna flip this around. We're gonna do the other side. Now, both sides are laminated, and I can feel the difference in the thickness, which is kind of nice. So I'm gonna lay this down. I have like a larger one, but for my filming setup, this works a little bit better for me. And what you're gonna need next is basically a ruler and some sharp edge to cut your cards. So this could be like a box cutter, an X-Acto knife, whichever. Even if you want to, you could probably cut it by hand, but I would recommend putting your bleed lines all the way across if you're cutting by hand so that you can make sure that you're cutting straight. I'm gonna do all technically my horizontal lines first. So I'm gonna cut from the base of where my little bleed cut line is from both sides and making sure that's aligned. I'm not gonna cut off the entire edge because the way how I have my cut line set up is the fact that I need this still here. I can't get rid of this bottom part completely. That might be an error on my part in terms of making the template, but it just works better. So just a few cuts to make sure I'm cutting all the way through. Also, cutting tip for if you're cutting thicker material, many lighter cuts is better than one deep cut, if that makes sense. Because if you do like a deep cut or like a heavy with full pressure, if you mess up because of like slipping and sliding, you might cause injury or just the fact that, you know, your ruler might move. But also you're putting a lot of pressure on your hand and we don't want any damage to your body. So you can do just lighter cuts all the way across and just do like 2 or 3 until you know that you've cut kind of all the way through. Do the inside ones first, actually. One more for good measure. Now, because I'm hand cutting these and I'm not using machine to cut them, there is going to be like a slight difference between each card. We can see, we can get rid of our border piece for our cards. And then we can move all of these out of the way. I feel like these could be used for something. They're kind of cute, at least the colors anyways. But here's a look at our cards. Now the lighting might be a little bit off, but you can kind of see there's like very little sheen. Here they are, so I'll just sort them really quick. Yeah, but here's kind of a look at all the cards together. Now, just to give them a slightly cuter touch, you could definitely leave your photo cards like this as is. Thickness test, it's like thick enough for at least what I like my photo cards to be for the most part. But for a cuter touch, let's use a quarter rounder. I'm using the 5mm ones. So basically to shove these into the corner like this. I guess I'm struggling today, but you just clip it off. You shove it into the corner and we can just trim the corners. Now, like I said, you don't have to do this. And I recommend if you do plan to do the corners, just be careful. This can also probably give a lot of strain to your hand. And I recommend that you get a corner rounder rather than cutting the corners just for it to be a little bit more accurate and cleaner. Okay, so now with our corners all rounded, I think these turned out really cute though. I like to do like one final check to make sure that one, all the photo cards have their rounded edges, but also sometimes like the edges just like hang on for dear life, so you can peel those off or like reclip them again. I keep a lot of my cards and like extra stickers in here, or even like little fan, like these little mini fan keychains that I've made. Let's move these out of the way. So these are like the previous ones. These ones are Polaroids, or fake Polaroids, I guess. And then I have the other cards. So these ones were the glossy ones with kind of like a hollow finish. So this one is thicker, and this one is thinner. So this one bends super easily. This one has a little bit more give. I feel like it's hard to see the difference though, because you can't really feel it. But this one has more sturdiness versus this one. So while I was talking about the thickness about these cards, I forgot for these ones I only laminated one side. I'm not too sure if I did any that has like the double laminate. So these are all my test ones, by the way. Yeah, none of these have like a double laminate on them. Not even my OC cards, I don't think either. Oh, these ones do actually. These ones feel very similar though, ish. I think if you can and you don't mind spending a little bit more on like maybe your laminating materials, I recommend laminating both sides if you're planning to make them a little bit more sturdy and just protect it overall. Otherwise, printing them just like on photo paper that's like thick like this also works, or maybe just doing the one side. This is kind of like up to your own preference. And then these ones were like other test ones, so testing out Maseki, kind of as like a business card type of thing. Don't know if I'm gonna keep it. Printed this one, and then I have some versions where you can see the laminate was not applied properly and I didn't notice and it wrinkled pretty badly. This one's not as bad, but I feel bad for selling it, so I'm keeping it as like my own copy. But if you know how to make like photo cards like this, you can also do like a long version almost and make a bookmark. So the size is not quite the same. It is a bit smaller, but it has the same steps basically. Just have to be careful about, like, once again, the template to make sure that they're fully aligned on your page. But it has like the matte laminate. I did the corners. And yeah, I just keep this guy in my sketchbook. He's basically just a bookmark. But hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me work on some photo card designs like I mentioned earlier, and learned a little bit about the process about making these ones at home, because I think it's kind of fun to do them maybe for the holidays as gifts, or if you want to have like a smaller batch for markets or conventions, then I think this is kind of a fun way. I recently did a commission for somebody, doing like a photo card commission, and I didn't really know this was a thing, but that's like kind of a fun thing to offer as well. I might do some adjustments. I might add the pink, yellow, blue, green, and red stars to the back to kind of represent the members. And I need to put my watermark at the bottom. So for now, these ones are going to be just a batch for me, I guess. Yeah, I think I'll just keep this as a batch for me. And maybe like friends can have like this the prototype versions of these cards. But I think that's it for today's video. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!